Those questions would dominate the investigation for years. But the search for Brandon Lawson did not end when the first search teams left the highway. In fact, for his family, that was only the beginning of a much longer nightmare. Brandon was gone, but there was almost nothing that could explain where he had gone or what had happened after his final phone calls. His pickup truck had been found abandoned about 4 miles south of Bronte, but Brandon himself could not be located. The Texas Rangers would eventually become involved, and the case would remain open for years. The landscape around Highway 277 made the search incredibly difficult. This was not a crowded neighborhood where a missing person could easily be spotted. It was rural Texas, open land, brush, fences, fields, and long stretches of darkness. And somewhere within that landscape, investigators believed there might be an answer. Searches were conducted around the area where Brandon had disappeared. Law enforcement officers, family members, friends, and volunteers all took part in efforts to find him. But nothing brought Brandon home. As the days passed, hope began competing with fear. Brandon's family had no confirmed explanation for his disappearance. They did not know whether he had become lost, whether he had been injured, or whether someone else had been involved. And then there was the 911 call. That recording became one of the most discussed pieces of evidence in the entire case. Brandon's words were difficult to understand. The audio contained background noise, and his speech was rushed and unclear. Over the years, people listened to the recording repeatedly, trying to determine exactly what he was saying. Some listeners believed Brandon was describing people chasing him. Others heard different words entirely. But none of those interpretations could be treated as proven fact. What Brandon actually meant during that call remained uncertain. That uncertainty gave rise to countless theories. Some people believed Brandon may have become disoriented and wandered away from the highway. Others wondered whether he had encountered someone else that night. And some focused on Brandon's personal circumstances and possible substance use, asking whether his state of mind could have affected what happened. But without enough evidence to establish a definitive timeline, these remained possibilities, not answers. For Brandon's family, speculation could never replace the one thing they desperately wanted. They wanted Brandon found. Years passed. The case continued to attract attention online, where people studied the 911 recording, mapped the area around the highway, discussed the search efforts, and tried to reconstruct Brandon's final movements. But despite all of the theories and searches, Brandon remained missing. Then, almost 9 years after that August night, something changed. In February 2022, a small search effort was carried out near Brandon's last known location. During that search, clothing was discovered that appeared consistent with what Brandon had been wearing when he disappeared. The discovery was significant enough for authorities to become involved. The Texas Rangers conducted a more extensive search of the area. And then they found human remains. For the first time since 2013, there was a possibility that Brandon Lawson had finally been found. But there was still one problem. The remains had to be identified. At first, the discovery could not officially confirm that Brandon was the person who had been found. DNA testing would be needed. And the family would have to wait again. After almost 9 years of searching, they were suddenly faced with another period of uncertainty. The remains had been found in the same general area where Brandon had disappeared, and the discovery appeared to fit the circumstances of the case. But appearances were not enough. The identification had to be scientifically confirmed. Months passed. Then more months. And the family continued waiting for the results. For people who had spent years wondering whether Brandon was still alive somewhere, this was another painful chapter. Then, in December 2024, more than 11 years after Brandon disappeared, the answer finally came. The human remains discovered in 2022 were confirmed through DNA testing to be those of Brandon Lawson. His family shared the news publicly, finally receiving confirmation that the remains found years earlier belonged to the man they had spent more than a decade searching for. Brandon had finally been found. But finding him did not solve the entire mystery. It created another question. How did Brandon die? And what happened during those final moments after he left his truck? Those answers have not been publicly established. The Texas Rangers currently list Brandon Lawson's case as an unsolved homicide investigation. Their case page continues to ask for information about the circumstances surrounding his disappearance. That classification is important. It means that although Brandon's remains have now been identified, investigators have not publicly established the complete circumstances of his death or identified the person responsible. There is no publicly confirmed explanation that tells us exactly what happened after Brandon's last calls. And that brings the mystery back to the beginning. A young father was stranded on a dark highway. His truck had run out of gas. His brother was coming to help him. Brandon called 911. He sounded distressed. He mentioned people nearby. Then the communication stopped. When his brother arrived, Brandon was gone. His truck was still there. And for nearly 9 years, nobody knew where Brandon had gone. Now we know something that investigators and his family could not know for most of that time. Brandon never made it home. His remains were eventually found in the same general area where he disappeared. But the discovery still leaves one of the most important questions unanswered. Why? What happened between the moment Brandon left his truck and the moment his life ended? Was he lost? Was he injured? Did he encounter another person? Or is there some detail from that final night that investigators have still not uncovered? At this point, there is no verified answer. And that is why this case should not be reduced to the theories that have spread across the internet over the years. Some theories may sound convincing. Some may seem to explain the strange details. But unless investigators can prove them, they remain theories. The confirmed facts are already haunting enough. Brandon Lawson disappeared in the early morning hours of August 9, 2013. His abandoned truck was found on U.S. Highway 277. His family and investigators searched for him for years. Human remains were discovered near the area in February 2022. And in December 2024, DNA finally confirmed that those remains belonged to Brandon. After more than 11 years, his family finally knew where he was. But they still did not have the complete story. For the Lawson family, the confirmation brought heartbreak, but also a form of closure that had been impossible while Brandon remained missing. For years, they had been forced to live with the uncertainty of not knowing where he was. Now they could finally bring him home. But the case itself remains unresolved. The Texas Rangers are still seeking information about what happened to Brandon Lawson. And somewhere inside those final moments may be the answer to the mystery that began on a lonely Texas highway more than a decade ago. Maybe someone saw something that night. Maybe someone remembers a detail that seemed insignificant at the time. Maybe the answer is hidden somewhere in the confusing 911 call. Or maybe the truth about Brandon's final moments will never be completely known. What we do know is that Brandon was not just a name attached to a mysterious 911 call. He was a father. He was a son. He was a brother. And he was a person whose family spent more than 11 years searching for him. His disappearance began with a stranded truck and a desperate phone call. It became a mystery that captured the attention of people across the country. And after years of searching, one part of that mystery finally came to an end. Brandon Lawson was found. But the question of what happened to him remains. And until that question is answered, the story of Brandon Lawson is not truly finished.